What if I told you that a woman vanished from inside her apartment even though the door was locked from the outside? In 1999, 24-year-old Emily Carter lived in a quiet building on the edge of Willow Creek, a peaceful town where nothing rare ever happened. Emily was responsible, punctual, and known for calling her mother every night. So when she missed 2 calls in a row, her mother drove to the apartment. The front door was locked, lights off, no answer. A neighbor helped her mother break the door. Inside, everything untouched. Phone charging, wallet on the counter, shoes by the door. Emily was simply gone. But the strangest detail, the deadbolt was locked from the outside, meaning someone with a key had sealed the apartment after Emily vanished. This one impossible detail would haunt detectives for the next 26 years. Detectives pulled Emily's phone records and found something chilling. Her last call had been to her childhood friend Mia Porter at 9:42 p.m., but Mia never answered. When police questioned her, Mia said she was at work until midnight. Her manager confirmed it. Security cameras showed her behind the counter. So why did Emily call her? To find answers, investigators interviewed neighbors. One reported hearing a short scream. Another claimed they heard footsteps on the fire escape. But no one saw Emily leave. Then, detectives noticed something extremely strange in the voicemail log. Emily had tried to call Mia 4 times in a row, something she never did. The last attempt lasted only 6 seconds. 6 seconds. Just long enough to whisper a single sentence. But there was no message, nothing recorded. It was as if Emily dialed, tried to speak, and someone stopped her. Detectives searched the apartment's surroundings and found a witness, a delivery driver who had been finishing his route around 10 p.m. He claimed he saw a man standing beside a dark SUV in the parking lot, looking up at Emily's window. When detectives asked him to describe the man, he gave only one detail. He looked like he was waiting for someone to come out, or forcing himself not to go in. Security footage from the building's entrance captured a figure wearing a hood, face hidden, standing still for almost 8 minutes. He never went inside. He never looked at the camera. But at 9:48 p.m., 6 minutes after Emily's final call, the hooded figure walked toward the back alley leading to the fire escape. Detectives paused the footage, zoomed in, enhanced shadows, but the face was completely covered. Still, one detail stood out. The man's left hand, gloved, kept tapping something metallic against his leg. A rhythm. A habit. Almost like someone tapping a key. And suddenly, investigators understood why Emily's door had been locked from the outside. What investigators discovered next turned the entire case upside down. When they analyzed Emily's apartment door, they found small scratches near the deadbolt, fresh scratches. The kind made by someone trying keys that didn't belong to them. But here's the part that made detectives freeze. Emily's building used custom-made keys. Every apartment had a unique pattern. Even the landlord didn't have full duplicates. And yet the door lock showed signs of multiple failed attempts. And then, finally, a successful insertion. Someone had a key, not a copy, a match. Detectives questioned the landlord immediately. He insisted Emily never requested a replacement key and no maintenance had been scheduled. Then he added something strange. Actually, she reported someone trying her door a week before she disappeared. Emily hadn't told her mother. She hadn't told friends. But she told the landlord that someone had quietly tested her door at night, as if checking whether the key would finally work. And that person didn't stop. Detectives dug deeper into Emily's final week, hoping to understand why someone was testing her door. They pulled her security call logs from the building office. There were 2 entries. Strange noise at door, 11:13 p.m. Someone tried the handle, 2:04 a.m. Both reported by Emily. When detectives asked the building's security guard why no one checked these reports, he quietly admitted something unsettling. "We sent a guard the first time, but the system showed someone had already entered the building with a tenant key." A tenant key? At 11:10 p.m.? No record of who used it? That meant one thing. Someone had access to a master key. The building never reported missing. Then investigators spoke with Emily's neighbor on the other side of the wall. She said she heard footsteps outside Emily's apartment 2 nights in a row. Slow, steady footsteps, stopping right at Emily's door, then pausing, as if listening. Emily was frightened enough to sleep with her phone on her chest, but whoever wanted to get inside wasn't done trying. Detectives returned to the building office and asked a simple question. Who had access to the master keys? Only 3 people: the building owner, his assistant, and the night maintenance worker, a man named Luke Harris. But when they contacted Luke, they learned something disturbing. He had quit the day after Emily disappeared. No notice, no forwarding address, just gone. Digging through old maintenance logs, detectives found an entry Luke filled out 6 days before Emily vanished. Master key set temporarily removed for inspection. But the owner insisted no inspection ever took place, which meant the master key was taken without permission and returned quietly after someone used it. The logs also showed a second strange note. Quote, "Side door alarm disabled. Tenant request." Emily never made that request. Detectives checked the date. The alarm was disabled exactly 12 minutes before Emily's first report of someone trying her door. Whoever wanted to get into her apartment was preparing long before she disappeared. Detectives returned to interview tenants one more time, hoping someone heard something they didn't think was important. Most gave the same answers. Nothing unusual. Didn't see anything. Didn't hear anything. But then they reached apartment 2B. Inside lived a young man named Oliver Grant, a musician who practiced late at night. Oliver hesitated before speaking. Then he said, "I didn't think it mattered, but the night Emily disappeared, I heard tapping on the pipes." Tapping? Yes, a slow, metallic tap that traveled through the walls between his apartment and hers. He demonstrated a hollow sound caused by hitting the metal heating pipe with a ring or key. Oliver said the tapping happened twice, first at 9:40 p.m., then again just after 9:50 p.m., the same minute the hooded man walked toward the fire escape. Detectives asked him if he ever heard Emily make that sound before. Oliver shook his head. "No, but I heard someone else make it, from the hallway." Someone knew exactly how to signal they were inside her building. Detectives reviewed every maintenance log, tenant complaint, and work order connected to the building, looking for anyone who might have known the layout, the alarms, and especially the master keys. One name kept showing up: Luke Harris, the maintenance worker who vanished. His initials appeared next to elevator repairs, alarm resets, and most importantly, door lock inspections. But then, investigators discovered something strange. Luke had been assigned to Emily's floor 3 different times the week before she disappeared. Each task was listed as tenant not home. But Emily was home during 2 of those visits. She even called the building office on one of those days. So why would Luke log that the apartment was empty? Detectives contacted other tenants. 2 people confessed they'd seen Luke standing in the hallway late at night, just checking the pipes. Another said he overheard Luke ask the landlord if any tenants lived alone on the top floor. And every time Emily walked past him, Luke stared at her far longer than normal. Detectives finally located a lead on Luke Harris, an unpaid storage unit outside town. The manager said Luke rented it right before quitting his job, the day after Emily vanished. When police cut the lock and opened the door, they expected spare tools or old furniture. What they found instead sent a cold shock through the entire room. Inside were dozens of items taken from apartments in Emily's building. Small belongings, spare keys, even mail. He had been collecting things quietly for years. On a dusty table in the back, detectives found a bundle of metal keys tied with red string. One tag was labeled 3C, Emily's apartment. But the most unsettling item was inside a small box placed separately from everything else: a notebook. Inside, lists of tenants, their schedules, their habits, and Emily's name underlined twice. Next to it, a chilling note, quote, "Door finally opens quietly." Detectives realized they weren't dealing with a panicked worker. They were dealing with someone who had been planning this for a very long time. Detectives took Luke's notebook to the evidence room and began reading it page by page. At first, it looked like a maintenance record: broken appliances, leaky pipes, tenant move-ins and move-outs. But the deeper they read, the darker it became. Some pages listed notes like "home late," "leaves door unlocked," "alone Wednesdays." And then they found a page dedicated entirely to Emily Carter, her routines, her schedule, her habits. But one line stopped everyone in the room. Under a section titled "Entry Attempts," Luke had written, "Tap code confirmed. She hears it." Detectives went silent. Tap code? Like the tapping sound Oliver heard through the pipes? Then the next line chilled them further. "Key fits. Door relocks quietly. Try window next." Luke hadn't just been watching Emily, he had been testing her boundaries, mentally, physically, and through the walls. And the last entry in the notebook was dated the night she disappeared. Under it were just 3 words: "She didn't run." Detectives returned to Emily's apartment with a new purpose: to search for anything Luke might have planted. This time, they brought a forensic tech specialized in covert devices. He scanned the living room, the kitchen, the bedroom. Nothing. Then he checked the vent near the ceiling in Emily's hallway. The meter spiked. Inside the vent, taped to the back wall, was a tiny black object covered in dust. A hidden camera, pointing directly at Emily's front door. The tech handled it carefully and whispered, "This wasn't here by accident. He was watching her leave and watching when she came back." Detectives traced the tiny cables leading down into the wall cavity. They eventually reached a small cutout behind the hallway wallpaper, a hole just big enough for wires and a small receiver. This wasn't improvised. This was installed. Then came the question no one wanted to ask. If Luke had a receiver, where did he watch her from? A forensic tech checked the signal range. It reached exactly one floor above. Emily's attic. Detectives climbed to the top floor, where a narrow pull-down ladder led into the attic, a space no tenant had ever used. Dust covered everything. Cobwebs hung from the beams. It smelled of insulation and cold air. But something was wrong. There were footprints in the dust. Fresh ones. A flashlight beam swept across the attic and stopped on a makeshift space in the far corner. A small stool, an empty water bottle, and a tangled cluster of wires leading to a receiver box. It was Luke's vantage point. From this exact angle, the hidden camera showed Emily's front door perfectly. Then, detectives noticed something they didn't expect. Beside the receiver was a small plastic container filled with keys. Dozens of them. Apartment keys, mail keys, storage keys. And taped inside the lid was a handwritten note. If she won't open it, the building will. Luke didn't just watch Emily. He watched the entire building. He had been sitting above them all for years, listening, observing, waiting. Detectives went back to the evidence room and opened Luke's notebook again, this time focusing on the pages they originally skimmed. Emily wasn't the only name written in detail. There were others. 5 of them. Each name had notes next to it. Comes home at 6. Alone most nights. Door lock weak. Never checks peephole. Some entries dated back more than 2 years. But detectives noticed something chilling. Each name had a line drawn through it, except Emily's. One detective whispered, was he planning something for all of them? Then a forensic analyst pointed at the margins. There were dates, times, and symbols, small circles and crosses. He matched the dates with old building maintenance logs. Every time a name was circled, Luke had worked on that person's floor the same week. Every time a name had a cross, that tenant had filed a complaint about someone rattling their door at night. This wasn't obsession with one tenant. This was a pattern, a long-term predatory pattern. And Emily was the only name still active. As detectives dug through Luke's storage unit evidence, a small USB drive fell out of the notebook's back cover. It wasn't labeled, just a scratched black casing, covered in dust. They plugged it into a secure police computer. At first, nothing appeared. Then a single folder loaded. Inside it was one video file, named only 3C Door, Emily's apartment number. The file was timestamped from the night she disappeared. Detectives exchanged uneasy looks and pressed play. Static. Then a faint image. The camera angle was odd, low, pointed upward, as if placed inside a vent or behind a grate. And then she appeared. Emily, walking toward her front door with her phone in hand. Her face looked confused, as if she heard something just outside. She pressed her ear to the door. The audio barely picked up, but the tech managed to isolate the sound. A rhythm. 3 taps. Metal on metal. The same tapping Oliver heard through the walls. Emily froze, then whispered a single word the microphone barely captured. "No." Detectives replayed the video again and again, hoping for even the smallest clue. Emily hears the tapping. She hesitates. She whispers, "No." But what they realized next changed everything. The video angle. It wasn't showing the hallway. It was showing Emily reacting to a sound coming from inside the walls. Luke wasn't standing at her door. He was already inside the building's structure, inside the maintenance crawl space that connected every apartment. The tapping wasn't a warning. It was a message, a signal. Luke was telling her he was already there. Forensic teams finally opened the crawl space above Emily's unit. There, in the dust, they found partial footprints, fresh insulation marks, and a small metal tool Luke used to unlatch vents quietly from the inside. It matched the scratches on Emily's bedroom window. The truth became clear. Emily didn't leave her apartment. She didn't go anywhere. Someone came in through the place no one ever checks, the walls. Luke Harris was found weeks later in another state, living under a different name. He never confessed. He never explained the tapping. But detectives are certain Emily realized what was happening just seconds before she disappeared. And all she could do was whisper that single word, "No."